And I now call upon the Assistant Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, the Honourable Sashi Kiran. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Ministers, Opposition Leader, Cabinet members and members of the House. Nisambula Vinakasaka, और सबको मेरा प्रणाम. I speak today in support of and also in appreciation of the coalition government's budget for financial year 2023-2024. I believe it is a budget that indicates that the government is listening to the needs of the people and trying to meet them, despite the mounting debt burden that the government faces. I thank the government for recognizing the need for increase in social protection allowances for the most vulnerable, with an allocation of 200.2 million overall. This is by far the biggest ever allocation for the ministry, especially for the social pension scheme. The government has allocated an estimated amount of 169.8 million, 84% of the ministry's total budget for the new financial year towards social protection programs to try and ensure that more than 97,000 beneficiaries on our various support schemes have an increase in their allowance. Mr. Speaker, if I may repeat that in Hindi, हमारी सरकार ने इस बजट में social welfare allowance में वृद्धि लाई है. None. Mr. Speaker, our Minister Honourable Linda Tumbuya will discuss in depth the overall impact of the new budget and the Ministry's plan for new financial year. But I want to focus on a few things in the Department of Social Welfare where we are making changes, and that may answer Honourable Bala's question. We have a new budget allocation for poverty graduation. This is because we recognize two particular weaknesses in our current system. The first weakness is that we do not have any active plans to move our current beneficiaries out of poverty. The second weakness is that we do not have the means to identify when many of our beneficiaries have ceased to need our help, often through a change in family or other circumstances. At that point, we should be in a position to reduce assistance to them or redirect our limited resources to helping others in need. It is important to remember, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the department does not currently support everyone in need. We have many applications for assistance which are still unmet for lack of funds. So we must be able to use our money as wisely as possible, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Most important, Mr. Speaker, is the need for us to help our people move off schemes such as family assistance to improve incomes through economic empowerment, skills development and pathways for employment. These are matters I'm passionate about, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes it's just a matter of making the right connections. One of our small success stories is being able to connect a major hotel group to a non-governmental organization with many unemployed women on its records. At a time when the hotel industry is desperate to replace staff because of losses overseas, we were able to help with recruitment of hundreds of trainees into this hotel group's training program, simply using smarter and more relevant connections. There are situations where single moms are willing to go and work. All they need is childcare support, for example. So it's just about thinking. Think about it, Mr. Speaker. Say, many job vacancies are advertised in newspapers, but the poor and the unemployed are not reading the newspapers, whether in print or online. Their time and limited money is directed to more urgent things. But there are NGOs who can help bring them together with potential employers, because they read the newspapers and they know where to find the people. We have to find ways to make better connections, including with the NGOs, who are often better connected to the poor than some of us in the government. This, Mr. Speaker, is a matter I know from personal experience. And this is why building relationships with NGO partners remains a critical need across all sectors of government. The government recognizes the importance of the civil society sector, and I'm thankful for the allocation of grants to organizations that work towards our deliverables. In this budget, 200,000 is a new allocation to community-based organizations that encourage women's social and economic empowerment programs. I have seen firsthand during the global COVID pandemic, when the past government was out of its depth in dealing with the crisis and took its time to plan assistance, it was the community-based organizations that mobilized basic needs. Mr. Speaker, sometimes government systems are inflexible and bureaucratic and lack the human element. Let me talk about another bureaucratic failure which we have addressed. Previously, girls from Fiji's 11 orphanages had to leave when they turned 18. This was a rule which applied regardless of the personal circumstances, abilities, or specific needs. There was a reason these girls were in orphanages, Mr. Speaker. They had no family support. Their legal status may have changed when they turned 18, but they were not better able to fend for themselves on the 18th birthday than they were the day before. This year, we have retained all those coming of age under state care and are enrolling them in skills programs with economic pathways. This is preparing them to enter either the job market or to use the skills to become entrepreneurs. This is a challenge for us. Each one of these young women is a human being, like all of us, with different hopes, ambitions, strengths, and weaknesses. They do not necessarily respond in the same way to a training program, but it is an improvement on the gap that we had before. Mr. Speaker, this is an example of where, as ministry, we need to be less rule-bound and more focused on the people we serve. It only takes a little bit of thinking and recognition that people are not numbers. We can do better. Mr. Speaker, the Social Welfare Department is committed to delivering an integrated social protection system with improved targeting, effectiveness, coverage, and impact on poverty reduction. We cannot do this without good information. At the moment, our information on our welfare recipient is poor, spread over multiple databases, which we cannot integrate and analyze. So we are unable to understand how and where we can be more effective. We are working with Australian government assistance to change this. We have a total of $3 million in this budget allocation to completely overhaul our management information system so that we can become more effective in targeting those who need help, but also identifying those in our system who can now be phased out of help. Mr. Speaker, in March this year, when I tried to talk publicly about these challenges, I was attacked by a senior politician who accused me of trying to undermine the rights of the poor people. And now that the ministry's budget has been substantially increased, the same politician is now saying that welfare payments are handouts and erode the dignity of those receiving it. Mr. Speaker, I accept that in the government we must be open to criticism of our mistakes and scrutiny of what we do. But those who criticize us must do more than just talk. We are trying to be more open and transparent about how we work and the challenges we face. Welfare recipients are not a political plaything, Mr. Speaker. People who want to criticize should take the time to find out the problems and offer solutions. And I'll certainly talk to anyone with a genuine interest in helping us. Mr. Speaker, sir, our ministry will also continue to work with development partners on new initiatives and programs in strengthening the social protection sector. Some of these will include an adaptive social protection strategy to better respond to recovery from disasters and in mitigating the impacts of climate change. Pilot parametric insurance with selective social assistance beneficiaries as a way to provide faster and more flexible funds to those affected by disasters. Mr. Speaker, sir, I had earlier told the House that the state homes, the places where we accommodate our young people and our elderly, are in poor condition because of insufficient budget allocations for maintenance. Pearly Gates Home in Suva has been allocated $100,000 for maintenance, infrastructure, as well as admin cost. The ministry has also been allocated more than $700,000 towards the refurbishment of the former Bar Mission Hospital complex. The intent is to transfer the operations of the Golden Age Home in Lautoka to allow the scoping works for the upgrade of the Golden Age Home. Mr. Speaker, this property has been neglected for years and now under attack from termites. The safety of the resident is compromised and we have run out of options. We have to do the best we can. That's why I'm grateful that we have a specific allocation of $250,000 for these scoping works. Mr. Speaker, having worked with rural communities for past 25 years, I have seen how committed and crucial our community leaders are for outreach programs, disaster relief, and ensuring that voices of our communities are heard in decision making. And I applaud the increase in allowances of Trani Koro, advisory councillors Matani Tikina and Trani Yavusa to enable them to function better. I can't help but appreciate the allocation for our rural roads and Ministry of Health. Visiting rural communities, we are constantly bombarded with narratives for the urgent need for improvement in rural infrastructure and our health services. During the pandemic, while in the civil society sector, I was directly involved in making medication and equipment available to help the Ministry of Health cope with the crisis. With this budget, I for one am glad the Ministry of Health will be better equipped to serve those in need. Mr. Speaker, I want to touch briefly on the plight of the people suffering from the devastating effects of Asian subterranean termite infestation. This is another issue that for years the previous government simply ignored. Many people, particularly in the West, have seen their homes destroyed by termites. No politician from the previous government took the time even to visit them or hear them out. The problem was left to the Biosecurity Authority to manage within its existing budget. Earlier this year, together with the Assistant Minister in the Prime Minister's Office, Honorable Sakyu Tumbuna, we met with stakeholders in Lotoka, which still remains a hotspot. None of the affected homeowners was aware of any remediation plan from Biosecurity Authority or any other government body. The City Council has no solution. Termites have severely affected businesses, homes, the tourism industry, and government infrastructure. We have discovered that there has been no effort to coordinate or collate data from business, tourism, municipalities, or rural housing to indicate the extent of the problem and economic cost of termite infestation that has been fast spreading to other parts of the Western as well as now Northern Division. We've had a few meetings with various stakeholders and have developed a task force to look into this mammoth problem. The people have been crying out to be heard for the past 10 years on this, but for the first time, the coalition government has taken the time to listen, and there is an allocation of 3 million to begin a support program to those affected. If I may repeat that in Hindi, Mr. Speaker, sir, 10 साल से हमारी जन समुदाय टर्माइट्स के विषय में आवाज़ उठा रही है, पर पहली बार कोलिशन सरकार ने उनकी सुनवाई की है और सहयोग के लिए $3 million का allocation किया है. Mr. Speaker, I want to finish my contribution on a subject that is important and very dear to my heart. And that is the subject of national unity and reconciliation. The subject of our debate this week is, of course, the budget. But I agree with the Honourable Minister for Finance when he reminded us that in economics, everything is connected to everything else. So it is in the nation building. We cannot have a strong nation without a strong economy and sound economic policy. But we also need resources and support for the most fundamental things that are important to all of us. Care of our people, peace, our sense of belonging, a sense of one Fiji. These things strengthen us and build confidence. Our confident, forward-looking country will become economically stronger, and with that, we hope, better able to care for those who are left behind. Mr. Speaker, for 16 years, we had a government that believed that some kind of national unity could be created by treating us as though we were all the same, denying our ethnic and cultural identities, treating our differences as sources of weakness, not strength. We were not even allowed to know our own nation's ethnic composition, despite the urgent need for such information in policy making for health, education, and so many other things. These actions did not bring us together. They tore us apart. They fed mistrust, division, and suspicion among our different communities. And now we have urgent work to do to fix it. Mr. Speaker, in our first 6 months in government, we have made a start. we have commemorated Gurmit Day and Rathasukuna Day with national holidays and consequential events. The return of the Great Council of Chiefs is a recognition of the rights of our indigenous people, even as that important body itself goes through a process of self-review. The terms of reference of that review recognizes the Council of Chiefs' responsibilities towards other communities in Fiji. These things may all seem merely symbolic, but they are consequential, Mr. Speaker, sir. We witnessed the Methodist Church lead a reconciliation ceremony in which all churches and faith groups participated. A commitment was made that we will celebrate all of us in our full diversity as we build our nation, our new nation. These are signs of greater things ahead. A new Fiji, Mr. Speaker, a Fiji where every citizen has a role to play in nation building. I attended the recent Fiji Times at 150 book launch. This book reminds us of the contributions of all communities, the Europeans, the early Chinese settlers from the sandalwood trade who found home in island villages, the Melanesian community who were brought before my ancestors as part of the slave trade have contributed to our nation, just as have Kioans, Rambi Islanders, Ratumans, and everyone who calls Fiji their home. Much of our history is not taught. Often, each of our people feel isolated and alone in their suffering. And when history is told, it is done in isolation of one people at a time. But where is the history of how well we all developed together? How is it that we are not learning about it? Our President, His Excellency Williame Katunivere, has given us a clear direction to include Fiji's collective history in our education system. Mr. Speaker, sir, when it comes to national unity and nation building, there is still much to do, and I believe our government has begun well. This budget has something for all our people, each one of us in our diversity, to help us progress as people, as communities, and as one nation. I would like to thank the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Professor Biman Prasad, for crafting this amazing budget that is people-centered, and I fully support and commend the budget for financial year 2023-2024 for a new Fiji. Vinaka Vakalevu, and God bless Fiji.
Thank you, Honorable Assistant Minister.